to have the 5 of you from the board, so we're able to go ahead.
Okay.
Mark Littell sends his regrets. He has something else that he's busy with.
Hi, we are now live.
Okay, so we can start the meeting then. And Kelly has already taken roll call. And at this point, I don't think there's any conflicts of interest on the agenda there. First thing on the agenda is a election for chair of the board. So at this point, would anyone want to put their name forward for chairing the board going forward?
I'd like to nominate Mark Littell. When I was speaking with him, he said he'd be interested in assuming the chair.
Okay, is there any other nominations or anyone else interested?
I'll move you, Thomas.
Okay. If Mark's interested, might I suggest he could be chair and I could be vice chair, I think, taking over for Robert, who's no longer on the board. If that works. How does that work, actually? Should we take a separate vote then for chair? All in favor of Mark chairing the board then? Okay, so Mark is now the chair, and for vice chair, myself nominated, I guess, and all in favor of that. So that carries. So I guess I will go ahead and chair today's meeting in Mark's absence. And sorry, let me just look back at my agenda. First up is the minutes from our previous meeting. Does anyone have any comments or concerns on them as they were presented or sent out? Okay, is there a motion to adopt those minutes from the previous meeting?
So moved.
Okay, and all in favor of adopting those minutes? They are accepted. So next on the agenda is airside operations from Sean.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome the old and the new, and the new old. I recognize some faces on here too from years ago as well. So great to see everybody's little faces on my screen. It's been a busy few months since we last met, between COVID and everything else. I'm sure there's a million little things I forgot in my report there, but we'll chat through them. There's a couple others I've kind of thought of that we'll discuss as we just on the fly as we go. So if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt, and we can kind of chat through things and clarify things as we go from there. So first off, in my report, I put a little graph on there just to kind of give us a feel of how COVID kind of has impacted things, and where we're seeing things going. You can see there that the fuel sales don't look that much different, but in reality, the number of liters sold was down. But also between 2019 and 2020, that's when the fuel surcharge flipped to the point where instead of rounding back down to 4 cents, it rounded up to 5 cents. So in effect, we were adding 20% to the fuel surcharge there. So it looks like the graph's a bit deceiving, but the fuel sales were down quite a bit in 2020 versus the previous years. The other number you see down there is the landing fee revenues. Two big things there. One is that the cross-border flights were incredibly diminished. Custom services at Brantford have been temporarily disabled or shut down. No indication on when those are going to be restarted. That started back around April or May of last year when they cut that off. So not having the American flights means fewer business jets, which means fewer landing fees. But also with the schools shut down, a lot of our landing fees, more than half of our landing fees, come from the Ross McDonald flights that come in and out for that. And so many fewer flights, less landing fees, less revenue for that. Q1 there's nothing to compare with Q1. They just threw it on there as something we can look at in future meetings to see how that grows. But we're off to an okay start. It's been busy. Our fuel sales and so on are doing well. Still, landing fees are way down because the schools are shut down. So we'll see how all that plays out in the coming months as we see where the rules and the protocols fall with regards to COVID. On to operational side of things. Our friends from the MNR will be back to do their rabies baiting again this year. They were in there last year, did quite a bit of it last year during the pandemic. This year is a reduced amount, probably about a third or so of what they've done in the past. This is the yellow twin otter that flies over Brantford, Brant County, all the way down Norfolk Way, and has the little conveyor belt that shoots little vanilla flavored biscuits out. Don't ask me how I know what they taste like. Out to feed the foxes, raccoons, things like that. Keep rabies at bay. It's been a very effective program that they've been doing, and the fact that they're doing less of it this year is a testament to how effective it's been. That the requirements are getting lower and lower. So that's great. Great to see them back. And again, it's kind of become old hat trying to figure out how to do things COVID safe these days. So it's just yet another one of the little dances we'll do of creating a separate space for them to make sure their staff have a place to be without interacting with our own airport staff more than they have to, and taking all the precautions and protocols that we have in place. Hangars. So I haven't talked to Joanne this week. I had hoped to reach out to her to talk to Joanne at the legal and real estate, but last I heard there was 18 people on a waiting list for hangars. Very high demand, some of the highest we've seen as long as I've been there. People are, in talking to an aircraft broker the other day, he's busier than he's ever been. Despite the pandemic, people are buying and selling planes like crazy. I just watched one get sold today just before I came home to join the meeting. So very, very, a lot of interest in general aviation. And on top of that, we have the existing challenges of other airports pushing for less general aviation at their airports, which sends, orphans our way. And the latest one of those being Grimsby. So I've got several calls now from the folks at the Grimsby airport. Hangar rates there were in the neighborhood of $350. As of July 1st, they're being spiked up to $750. So you have a lot of very frustrated people who are, and when we talked to this morning, are just hanging up their wings. That's it for them. They haven't been flying a lot lately, so this was a reason for them to even sell the airplane. So yeah, a lot of people looking for places to move to. And again, some of those places that people are looking to move to, some of those aircraft are aircraft that even if we had the space, we may not be able to fit. Things like amphibious aircraft that are too high for any of our hangars, or things like more modern designed aircraft like the Cirrus SR-22 or the DA-40, which are wide enough that they would fit in our 70 row of hangars, the 7 hangars that are in our 70 row, but all of our other hangars would be too narrow. I mean, they would fit, but you have 1.5 inches of clearance on each wingtip on a $750,000 airplane. That's not the kind of margins you want to be working with. So we've had in the budget, we've had some plans for getting new hangars on the go. So been talking to Rick a little bit, and looking to do what we can to accelerate trying to get a home for people as soon as possible. Every tenant we have means more of those fuel sales, more of those fuel revenues and things like that come into the city, not to mention the actual hangar fees and so on, and all the other things. A lot of these folks are kind of in that retirement or looking to head to retirement phase of life, and are buying homes in this area or cottages or whatever down by the lake. So it can all benefit to bring in more people to the airport and to our community. Next on is Conestoga College. So as you know, we have several Conestoga College programs running at the Brantford Airport. We have the heavy equipment program, which teaches the kids how to use the heavy equipment as well as maintain it. We have a welding program, and new this year we have an agriculture program. One of the things we talked about early on when the idea of a heavy equipment program was discussed was the idea of having some of the students put their schooling to work on various little projects around the airport to actually make some improvements to the airport and the lands that they're using, and the students to get that real world benefit for it. So Rick's been spearheading that with them and setting them up with some projects. So as of this week, they're out there working and smashing up pavement right now. So there's a really bad area of pavement or cement just north of Hangar 180, or what we call the candy stripe hangars. That's being torn up yesterday and today to get that area prepped and ready, that if and when we can repave it, we'll be ready to do so. And in the meantime, it's taking away a piece of the ramp that is not just rough, but is dangerous to the aircraft to be taxiing over. Something we've had cordoned off with pylons and signs for quite a while, trying to keep aircraft away from it to protect them. So they're going to be making use of the cement they pull up out of that to create some gravel and level out the road that goes into the record center, the 190 Aviation Ave. And then the other project they're working on is going to be more of a long-term, over multiple years, different classes, I'm sure. Something we've never had at the airport is a perimeter road, a ring road that goes all the way around. We've never been able to go out and drive and check our fences. You can walk it, but it's quite the hike. Most of our fences are the original fences from the 40s and 50s. Many of them are really worn down, missing pieces, broken, and so on. And we don't have an easy way of accessing them to fix them or to ensure that there's not new things opening up. We're looking for areas of people trespassing and so on. So we've struggled with things in the past years where suddenly we see a snowmobile racing across the field and have to go figure out how he got in and where he came on the property, things like that. So so building this road is going to be a real benefit to maintaining the security of the airport, making sure that only the people that are supposed to be using the airport are there, but also providing easy access when it comes to maintaining things. And in the case of emergency, it's going to give us we'll always have a way of kind of taking the long way around to access something if for whatever reason we can't get at it. So looking forward to slow and steady progress on that project. We've got a tenant access gate. So just to back up a little bit, so there's been 4 gates that have been maintained in the last couple of years. So the main gate by the terminal building was converted into a electronic key card swipe access gate. And that's been going very well to try to keep a lot of the transient vehicles from just entering the ramp, or people entering the ramp that just don't need to be. It's been discouraging to that, but still allowing easy access. I'll talk in a little bit about a film production we're doing, but it's been a huge tool in that. Normally when we're escorting large groups back and forth across the runways, we have to have someone out there waiting at the gate, telling people when to stop, when to come, and so on. With this new gate, it's great because they line up at the gate. I can come by in the truck, push the button, that group will come through and it closes right behind them. I can escort them out to the runways, and when I come back, there's a new group of people waiting there at the closed gate. So it's been worth its weight in gold this week so far. The other gates that were made was one that goes down to the Conestoga work area as well as the records room. That gate's set on a timer and it's been working well. And then a sliding gate, non-electronic sliding gate, was put in at Brant Arrow to replace the very decrepit one that was down there. The latest gate, though, is this one here across from the terminal building that's specifically for the T-hangar tenants to access their hangars without having to drive on the active portions of the ramp. So we've had a few slowdowns, mostly COVID-related things that have been a bit of a challenge for us getting that up and running. It's up and running now. We're just at the final stages of getting some of the paperwork side of things done to grant access to the tenants to make sure that they know where they can be, where they're going, and that they're not going to be straying anywhere but to and from their hangar directly. So hoping to see that go live hopefully this week. So we're gonna jump around a bit here. Rick, Kelly, and I and Stu met. Stu is one of our quality assurance manager on my end of things here. We met to play with an old tool that we haven't used a whole lot. We've got the Airport Safety Management System manual, our SMS manual that was created for us years ago. And one thing that we haven't utilized a whole lot that we should have been utilizing more is the risk assessment tool for that. In the means of when someone comes to us with a new proposal, instead of leaving it to my discretion or a chat between me and Rick or Jim Quinn previously, to actually use this tool that we have at our disposal to sit down and kind of assign some numbers to the risk involved, to the benefit involved, and make our decisions based on that. So we got together, had a bit of a meeting, and kind of backtracked on a few things to kind of run them through this process again. We get a lot of requests to use the airport. Some of them are kind of easy yeses, and some are easy no's, and then there's a lot in the middle. We've had requests to use our airport for a local gliding school to do all their flying here until their grass runway dried out in the summertime. We've had requests to do banner towing, requests for snowmobile drag races in the winter, all sorts of things like that. And so to have a tool like this that we can get in the practice of using regularly to address those things. So through that, we were able to kind of say yes to a couple of small airport use things and figured out, no to a couple of other things as well. So one of the most recent things we looked at was this film production. So we'll kind of jump into the next step here. The next item. This film production is a 66-day long film shoot. We've been doing film work at the airport for 20-some years. It's kind of old hat to us. We're used to it. We know the ins and the outs and the terminology and how to deal with these people. We've got a great relationship with most of the production studios in Toronto, but we've never done one like this. So it was worth kind of running through this process to think through the impacts to our operations, the impacts to staffing, health and safety, especially in a time of COVID too. So, but yeah, we looked at it and decided, with a few mitigating factors, like having more of my staff on to escort people back and forth and controls, we can do this safely, and it can be a big benefit to the airport. So they're filming, it's for the HBO series Station 11, which is going to be a new HBO series based on the book Station 11, loosely based on the book from what I understand. But yeah, there's a crew of about 140 people. Long hours. Every day is 7 to 7 at a minimum, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Today is a long one. It's 7 a.m. I was there this morning, and they're gonna run through till 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. Take a 2-hour break and then go from 6 a.m. through until sometime in the wee hours of the morning again. So long hours of filming. It's been a bit of a challenge making sure I've got staff in the right places at the right time to deal with them, but so far so good. They've been a great crew, very respectful, very keen to work with us and our protocols that we have in place to make sure everybody gets to and from their shooting area safely. One of the big factors in approving this was that there are no runways shut down. Typically, when we're doing film shoots, we usually shut down one runway so that the crews can work on it. In this case, the premise is a kind of 10 years after a worldwide pandemic, and most of the world is in ruins, and our old taxiways that are in ruins and were slated to be removed really jumped out at them. And I've talked to the director a couple times now, and he just loves all the big nasty weeds growing up out of our taxiway. This is perfect. So so we've been very, very careful not to drive over any of our weeds and squish anything, so everything looks as ragged as possible for them. But because they're inside the inner triangle, there's no runway shut down. So it is a lot of work to escort a crew of 140 people that all decide to show up at different times across the runway. But there's no direct operational impact on losing flights because this runway wasn't available or so on. So that's been great. A couple last minute things. So the Robinson Road gate, it's slated to be replaced. Our resident farmer has offered to replace it at his own expense because he needs to get his combine through there. So we like new gates. So that's something that was going to happen before COVID started, but then things kind of fell off the radar there a bit. Another one that's not on my report here is Zimmer Air Services. They've been involved in spraying for the gypsy moths. I think it's on a 2-year, 3-year cycle or whatever. They're back again this year. You saw the gypsy moths were getting pretty bad last year. They're going to be worse this year by the sounds of it. So I have to call them this afternoon. We'll set up an area where they can set up to work, but it's a bit of a side operation. Well, they'll be coming and going from the airport, just refilling and then taking off again to go do their spraying. So back and forth for them. Like I said, this happens every couple of years, so nothing new to us. The difference being this year that the area where they normally set up is where a lot of this construction is happening for the Conestoga College program. So we'll find a safe spot for them. And then the other thing is there's a women's pilots group called the 99s. Last year, they organized a little fly-in event, kind of at the lower peak of the COVID stuff when things were a little bit more open. They had, I think, 7 or 8 aircraft that visited. They just had a few guest speakers, watched some videos and stuff. They camped outside at the south end of Hangar 70. There's a little grassy area there. So they camped outside there. No fires or barbecues or anything like that. It was just purely an overnight camping trip for the ladies, and then took off again the next day. So they've expressed interest in doing the same thing again this year, but we'll have to wait to kind of see where the COVID situation plays out when it comes to that. But yeah, planning that for later this summer. That's all I've got on my thing. I'm sure there's 100 million more things, but it's been good. I mean, despite all the challenges that COVID has brought, we've really learned how to be flexible. We've learned how to work around issues and find ways to cope. So I think we're set up for a good rest of the year. Looking forward to it.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Does anyone have any questions for Sean?
Greg?
Go ahead, Greg.
Once the film crew's done with the inner runways, is that something that we're going to look to Conestoga to have them remove them?
It's something that has been on the radar for them to work on. But as soon as we got wind of this is actually not the first production that has expressed interest in using, and specifically was looking for sketchy looking asphalt. This is about the 3rd one this year that's kind of called and shown interest in it. There's a really big, no surprise, there's a really big influx of movies coming about the post-apocalypse, worldwide flu pandemics and stuff like that. I mean, that's going to be the flavor of the week for the next couple of years here, I think. But I don't know. It's on the radar. We've talked to them about it. We'll have to see if there's any other things on the horizon that might want to utilize it in its current state, though, because it's kind of nice when it makes us money instead of costing us money.
And the waiting list for T hangers is enough that we can do another row and finish off the oversized ones. Can we do both? You think?
We'd have to do a little bit of a survey with Joanne. So Joanne's in the process of calling some of these folks to see. Just because they're on their list doesn't mean they're standing there waiting for a hanger, right? I mean, they may have found another hanger elsewhere. It doesn't mean we have 18 people ready to fill it. That's that. So we'd have to do a bit of a survey to kind of get a feel for that, as well as the size of aircraft. And a lot of these people haven't even seen the prices yet. It could be new people that are just interested in buying a plane. The idea of that 70 row, they're in the neighborhood of $600 a month. That might not be a lot of people's cup of tea. to pay that rate. So we'd have to do a bit of a survey to get a bit more of a feel, but I would expect that with that many people, we'd probably be able to put up a row of 10, and I would say fill it by the end of summer easily enough. I would be surprised if we didn't, based on the amount of demand we're seeing, the calls we're getting.
And some of them need the oversized hangers as well. So should we
Yes,
look at extending that?
again, that'd be depending on what we hear from the little survey calling the people, but yeah. The other thing too is we need to revisit and make sure and check with the latest edition of the TP 312 airport specifications. There's this transitional zone that goes out from the edge of runway 0523 that goes horizontally from the edge of the runway 150 feet, and then from there it climbs out at a 1 to 7 slope. And I believe last we looked, we could put another row in there and it would still be just under that slope, but we can't go much more than that before we have to start doing other things. The other thing too is the film crew is also using the old Bluebird lot that we used to lease to Bluebird years ago, and we use for air show parking now. As I'm kind of driving around there and cutting grass around there and getting it ready for the film shoot, we could also, you talk about extending that 70 row, Greg. I don't know what else would have to happen, but you could almost extend one of say something like 60 row could extend south into that area, and could go, that row of 10 hangars could become a long skinny row of 30 hangars, for instance, and just have one taxiway that you have one long row that would come all the way up. So something to think about as we put things together here for it. But I think one of the biggest challenges for us is going to be the cost of building materials this year. If I recall, the last hangar we put up, I think they were shooting for about a 20-year ROI on that hangar. Well, if our building costs go up 300%, it becomes a 60-year ROI. So, yeah, it might mean looking at a number of things, fee structures, whatever. We'll see. I hate to put it off for another year in the hopes that building prices will drop, but at the same time, it has to be feasible. So,
yeah. Okay, thanks.
On that point, Sean, I was also going to ask, is there, like you commented on how some people might be more interested than others or just testing the water on the hangars. Would there be any value to doing some sort of like deposit? If it's that competitive for hangar space, could we do something where if they put a deposit down, they can save their spot for a hangar kind of thing? Like just to know that we actually have 10 people kind of putting their money where their mouth is and that serious about getting a hangar?
To be honest, Tom, I don't think it would be worth it, just because we've seen in the past, every single one we build, we fill. If we build it, they will come. And then the demand is still there.
Okay.
Even if it's not those 18 people, it'll be, if it's not 10 of those 18, it'll be another 10. Like there's demand there, and we used to be a bit on the high side comparatively to other airports. But recently other airports have kind of gone up in price, which kind of puts us a bit more on an even playing field. I think that's what's caused a lot of this interest lately, is that we're no longer an outlier on the high side. We're kind of now middle of the road. So, okay.
And Greg had mentioned about larger hangars. Is that larger horizontally, or would we actually be looking at doing vertically for like float planes and that as well at the same time?
I'm assuming Greg's talking about the wider and slightly higher hangars that are in 70 row that are 12-foot doors and 45 feet wide, instead of all the other ones, which are 9.5 feet high and about 34 feet wide. 40 feet wide, 39 feet wide. But there is also demand, and we notice it mostly in the fall, for hangarage for float planes. We at the Flying Club have a float plane that lives in our hangar just because there's nowhere else on the field it can go. We've talked about, as a part of our hangar building strategy, to also look into building, a larger shared space hangar that would allow aircraft that are larger and taller to be parked there on a monthly or yearly basis, but also that would allow for some some transient overnight hangarage, which is something we don't have and we haven't had for many years. The idea of someone flying in a business jet saying, "Hey, I hear there's hail in the forecast tonight. Do you have a place I can put my plane?" And us having a set, fee and things like that, where we would tow the aircraft in and take care of it. Right now, we don't have anything in our fee structure or anything that really allows for that. The way we're set up now, where we have to have these leases and everything in place, we're not there, where I can't just throw an aircraft in a hangar overnight that's city owned. So that's something that's always fallen to the private businesses. So the flying club, if it's small enough, we'll try to stick it into our hangar, or we'll call Blaine and see if he's got room to house a hangar, or to house a jet or something like that. But we've never had anything. We've never had a city asset that allows us to do that kind of last minute transient storage.
Okay.
That would, and it's a potential source of revenue, of course, too, above and beyond the monthly rentals.
For sure. All right, thanks, Sean. Does anyone else have any questions for Sean? Okay, we can move on to Rick's report then.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. I appreciate everybody's time today. The information in my report was circulated earlier, so I don't necessarily need to go through it in chapter and verse. If there are any particular questions related to any of the items, I'm happy to speak to them. We are, as a team, working through getting ready to roll out the RFQ for line painting for this year and crack sealing. So we will base it on work that we weren't able to afford last year, and kind of just go down the list year by year until we get everything crossed off. We were anticipating starting construction on the runway extension safety area the end of 0523, and that has been deferred by a year. The design that we had needed some substantial adjustments, and so we are delaying that work and taking another run at it for 2022. Sean talked about the fencing that we talked about, and we don't need to update that any more than what he's already provided. We've had several leases renew, and we're working through renewing many of the rest, so that we are at current leasing with all of our tenants as opposed to month to month. So that process is ongoing as time allows and as the negotiations conclude. Filming continues to be something that we are excited about supporting at Brantford Airport, and certainly appreciate Sean and his team for making that very easy to accommodate, relatively speaking. And the growth of Brantford as a destination for film shoot activity is something that the Economic Development Department is really excited about, and we're working with them to make it a little bit more formalized and standardized as these different shoots come to town, and certainly excited about the opportunity to see Brantford on the big screen in many ways. Actually, one of the things, while I'm talking about Brantford on the big screen, I received in the mail yesterday a postcard from a long time ago of the Brantford Airport from the 1940s, just as a museum piece item. This is no longer the Brantford Airport. This is a completely different location than what we have, but as a historical artifact of seeing Brantford in something that's quite interesting, I thought I might share it today. Came to me from Gravenhurst, and a lady found it in a postcard library and sent it to me for information purposes. I'm glad to say that the NAV Canada process, which was extremely lengthy and convoluted, but has for all intents and purposes wrapped up, and we should see the publication of our approach recertification documentation next month in their cycle. So that's exciting. Just in time to start it all over again, I'm sure, but that's how this rolls. And last but not least, in terms of my facilities and buildings report, We are preparing a SOP, a standard process for considering land purchase and land lease proposals as we receive ideas and proposals from potential partners and tenants that are looking for a different relationship or different infrastructure than what we have available. We want to be able to get information in enough complexity and detail that we can fairly analyze the opportunity. So we are expecting from these proponents a fair amount of information related to their plans and how it would be affected by the county zoning bylaws and the building code, and also how it fits with the airport master plan as it's currently constituted, what the benefits would be to the airport and the airport community and to the city. So we're expecting a fair amount of homework from proponents before we can provide a fair analysis and give that information to the board for consideration, and also to the real estate committee for consideration before it goes to council for approval. So that process is being fleshed out, but we do have a format that we are working with, and anything that's coming to us these days, we are providing that outline of a process. Although it hasn't been formalized, we are providing that outline of a process for them to follow, so we have solid information on which to base decisions. That would be the end of my section 5.2.2, Mr. Chair, and I'd take any questions on those matters at this point.
Hey, does anyone have any questions for Rick? Nobody. Well, I have a couple.
Sorry.
I just wanted to ask about the Conestoga and their construction. I'm stretching, like they're doing their activities to help us around the airport. I'm stretching my memory back a few years now, but I remember a report a while ago from just regarding the culverts and the condition of the drainage. Is that something that they might be able to help us with as well, or is that kind of getting too complex and beyond beyond what they would get into? But even like just to dig up, yeah, has that been looked at all or considered?
Sean and I have had those conversations with the Conestoga team. I think you're right in that it's a bit more technical than they're ready to tackle at this point, but that may be something they can consider in the future. We don't want to, or they don't want to put us in a position of regretting giving them the opportunity to dig up a culvert. And so, yeah, we're erring on the side of caution with respect to those things right now.
Yeah, just to add to that, we identified one area in particular that that needs to be addressed. But in talking to the site supervisor when we went out and looked at it, it was skill-wise not just beyond the students, but also it's the sinkhole has created such a deep hole that it's just become a bit on the dangerous side for his students to be working around that level of slope and so on. So
okay.
a bit beyond where he wanted his students working, understandably.
Yeah.
And sorry, I had a question too. I had my mute on. Rick, when it comes to the crack filling, is that something that that kind of follows the price of oil and gas too? With the spiking fuel prices we're seeing this year, I mean, we'll probably get a little less bang for our buck when it comes to the crack filling this year.
I imagine so. We're trying to work with our other city contracts to take advantage of bulk buy when they put out their contract for crack sealing here in town. Then we try and tag on to that work so we can get advantages of some bulk purchasing capacity. But you're right, that's commodity based pricing. So we'll see. We have actually in our budget an annual crack sealing and line painting allocation this year for the first time. So we will be able to have that envelope and kind of flex sealing versus painting within the envelope year over year to stay on top of this. So we need to talk through that you and I about whether we want to, where we want to draw that line this year. Are there some crack ceiling urgencies that we want to
Right.
perhaps dedicate more resources to than painting this year,
Yeah.
or vice versa? So,
Okay.
yeah.
And Mr. Vice Chair, along the same lines of the cracks and condition of the runways and ramp, one of the other things I neglected to include in my report is we're also seeking a fairly prompt and way to deal with our tie downs right now. We have our cables that are woven through the ramp and are becoming less and less effective and more reliability. So I'm working with Rick and Sheldon to try to come up with a way of replacing those to have something that'll work well for our tenants and transient customers as well.
Awesome.
To that, just to follow up on that, if there are, in your experience as members of the flying community, locations where you've seen really effective solutions, perhaps you've touched down at an airport over your career that did tie downs really well. We're certainly looking to take advantage of best practices and successes in other places that you may have experienced. So any suggestions, please pass them on to Sean or myself.
Sean, is that something we could put out to the airport community? And I'm drawing a blank on the acronym.
COPA?
Not COPA, the other one. They've done
AMCO.
AMCO, thank you.
AMCO. Yeah, it is one we could put out to AMCO, but actually COPA is not a bad idea either. I'm the speaker at a COPA meeting tomorrow night, and that might be something I could task them with as they're out flying around this spring. If they happen to see something like, take a quick picture and send it to me, and then we can maybe kind of marry the best of both worlds and create something that's going to be good for us. But no, we can also reach out to our folks at AMCO as well.
I know I've seen the email from AMCO where they'll do the broadcast to all the members, asking everybody to respond, like
an
a survey.
airport is asking, yeah,
that thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Might be worth asking them to let us know what not to do as well. They've probably seen some things that look good to start with, but didn't work out for
That's
whatever
very
reason.
true. Yeah, we although that's mostly our file, what not to do.
Well, Sean, last time you talked about it, you talked about the I think they're kind of like a ring that will flip up, and then otherwise they drop down and they're flush with the ground.
Yeah,
Like, that's a great idea. I guess the question is how to put that into how to install it into concrete that's already there. And
yeah, whatever we do, we want something that we can plow over top of. We lose every winter. We lose about a third of our ramp to not being able to access it because we don't tangle up snow blowers and plows in these cables. It was a whole lot more flexibility and not just more ramp space, but also just in the way that snow plowing is done. Just to push snow around this big island of no-go and find a place to put the snow. You can just push it in any direction. So something that's definitely one of the features we're looking for.
so I had one last question. I'll direct it to you, Rick, but maybe Greg could chime in as well. In regards to building another line of T-hangers, is that something that, one, the board should consider passing a motion today in support of or not in support of? And two, could you give me an idea or give us an idea of, if you know, the process of that? Like if we should perhaps offer a motion, but then beyond that, does it go to the real estate board? Does it go to council? That kind of thing?
So I'll do my best to respond, but Lise, if you're available and want to chime in, if I miss anything, please do that, and then pass on to Councillor Martin. There is a initiation of design in the current approved capital budget. So it was approved a couple of years ago to begin, but the actual construction element of it was deferred through the estimates committee. So we have some money to start the process, but we don't have the full construction budget in our current approved capital plan until multiple years out. from a process point of view, we can get started with the design, and we have enough money in the approved budget to begin that. It is also in the airport master plan in terms of a location and that kind of stuff. So I think many of the initial thresholds have been met, Mr. Chair, but the fact is that we would be able to, at this point, start the design project and perhaps get to the point where we were ready to tender, but we would not have the dollars in the approved budget for it to actually take the next step and be constructed. So that will take some not only support from this board, but also council approval through the budget process.
Okay,
Through the chair, it's Lee Sordo, Director of Facilities Management and Security, and I could just add to that as well. Rick's correct. We don't have enough to proceed with full construction, and typically in the past we've done these T hangars through a design build. So we can get started with a preliminary design and do some investigating, but we do need to revisit the budget and advance the capital that had been pushed back and farther out in the 10-year capital plan. There is some work that Rick and our capital team are looking at right now. We're just getting started in the capital plan development, and there are a couple projects even that we do have open that have significant budgets that we may not need any longer. One is tied around the decommissioning of the taxiways that, as we've already discussed, Conestoga's working on for us. So we could look at even closing some of those accounts and reallocating the funds to support this new build as well.
okay.
There's a couple strategies that we can look at that we can take away and come back and update at a later date as well.
And it's easier to get T hangers into the capital budget because we can debenture, because there is a revenue stream that they generate to cover the cost of the debenture. So it's something that we can work into the capital budget fairly easily.
Okay.
And if there's some capital money from other projects, then we don't need to debenture the full cost, which would make it feasible for those debenture payments to be paid with the revenues that come in. So it might even be worth taking it to council this summer to see if we can put a rush on it. Either get started this year or make sure that it's in the plan for early next year.
If I may even suggest through the chair that the board even provide direction to staff to initiate that.
Mr.
Greg,
Chairman, I'll move seeking a seconder that this board advise the staff to prepare the necessary report to go to council for debenturing for a T hanger.
Councillor Coleman seconded. And is there any debate on the motion? Okay, is all in favor of the motion as presented? Motion passes. All right. Is there any other questions for Rick?
Just a little direction on the motion we just passed. I think we need to look at a full row of T hangers plus finishing off the oversized hangers. And it might be interesting to take a look at finishing off the oversized hangers, making them higher as well to accommodate float planes. Whether there's enough market for that to justify. I think we can add 3 onto that. Sean, I think there's enough room for 3.
That's my understanding, is there's room for 3 as is existing. Yeah, making them higher. If you're thinking of 3 individual hangars that would also be higher, is what you're thinking?
Yeah, just extend that row of oversized hangars,
Yeah.
but make them higher as well.
Yeah. I like the idea. I'm not quite sure all the details of how it would work with roof lines and drainage and stuff like that, but if it works, that'd be great. Be awesome.
Something to consider anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we just say all in favor of the motion as amended then, as Greg's? Kelly, would you have that, or do you need us to clarify the motion?
I'm good. I've got it. And I can look back on the YouTube video later also to make sure I've got all the wording correct. So thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, and then I guess the last thing would just be standing items. Is there any update, Rick, on the standing item? I think you kind of touched on it a little bit already.
A little bit. Just the staff continues to review the strategy and the master plan and make sure that we're getting ready to update it and bring it forward. One of the items that the board may be aware of that is identified in the master plan is additional property to be considered for the long-term purposes of the airport. And one of the properties so identified in the master plan is currently for sale. And so the property identified in the master plan forms a portion of what is currently for sale adjacent to the airport. And so I guess from a staff point of view, there would be a considerable amount of work required to scope out the feasibility of that, acquiring that property and the long-term requirements for that and the financing of it. And at this point, we would ask for the board to consider whether or not that time and effort would be well spent by staff, or whether that's not something that the board sees a value in pursuing at this time. The parcel adjacent has been listed for $10 million. And so that's a significant piece of financing that would be required and is significantly larger than the parcel identified in the master plan. So there's a number of business feasibility types of analysis that would need to take place in order to kind of come forward with a plan that would be, even worth taking to council's consideration. But we don't want to ignore the opportunity, but we don't want to jump down a rabbit hole without sort of board direction and support that that's something that should be done at this time.
Through Mr. Chair, if I can just ask a bit of clarification there for Rick. I know very little about real estate, so I apologize if I'm, this sounds like a 3-year-old talking. How feasible is it to purchase it, sever off the portion that is of any interest to us, and then immediately sell everything that's left?
That would be part of the analysis, Sean. I'm not sure what the county has with respect to minimum size for severances and what would be required. So that's something we haven't looked into, but definitely part of the consideration would be to say, this is what's for sale now. Would it be possible to acquire and keep what we want and resell the rest? Certainly that's the long-term vision anyway. We would not necessarily want to keep all of it anyway in terms of whatever sort of subdivision or commercial development plan of development would be on the property. But yes, there are possibilities there. We would certainly need to be, following the county's guidelines with respect to minimum lot size and severance restrictions.
Do you know how many acres it is, and what about is that a normal price for that size of land? Or I know real estate's stupid right now, but
yeah, I don't have those details at my fingertips, but it's, I would say 3 to 4 times the size of the parcel that is required or that is shown in the master plan. People are putting out properties right now and getting, bids, several orders of magnitude over asking price. So what is a realistic price for per acre? I wouldn't even begin to comment.
No.
There's about, there's 122 acres for sale. There's also a tobacco farm on the land. So yeah, there's a lot of due diligence and challenges that we'd have to overcome.
So it's about a quarter of the size of the airport property, just to get a size and scale.
We probably only need about 25 acres of it.
Yeah, just that south east corner of it. Yeah.
Stretching anyone's memory of the master plan, can you fill us in as to what the purpose of the extra land is? Is it all coming down to like extending the runway, something that's not going to happen for a long time anyways?
extend the runway for safety, but also to extend the recreational T-hanger development at that end as well, and provide a direct entry T-hanger off of the highway on was it Highway 56 or 53, Colburn Street there, so that they have direct access.
Would that be around the field where the air show parking normally is?
Yes, exactly. Next to that.
Okay.
So in the master plan, I don't know if we can certainly circulate this for the board later, but it's exhibit 8.9 in the master plan, and it's identified for runway safety zone extension, as well as Lee said, for some groundside commercial and recreation, general and aviation expansion. So lots of opportunities there, and that master plan is something that we're looking at. The direct entrance off the main road there, certainly in the long-term vision of the airport, having a main entrance that would be visible from that artery is valuable and would be potentially part of what could be considered something that would be worthwhile. But as I said, there's lots of ideas and possibilities, but there's $10 million attached to just the listing, never mind the actual closing costs or servicing costs and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of information that would need to be developed, and not against going down that road, but certainly not without direction and support from the board.
Go ahead, Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment is to Rick is that neighboring land, you only usually get one chance to buy. And it's an opportunity that the city maybe needs to take a look at this. And I'm sure that as suggested by Lisa, that severances can be attained and whatnot. I get it. But if you need the neighboring land to make things work for down the future, I would fully support to go ahead.
I'll second that.
Any other comments or debate on that motion? Okay, all in favor of that motion? Motion moves. So with that, I guess you have
A lot of work to do.
a lot of work to do. I guess we can discuss that quite a bit, I guess, in future meetings as well, what's to come of it. But thank you for bringing that to our attention, and look forward to seeing where that goes. Okay, with that, there's nothing further on the agenda. Is there any other comments or concerns that anyone wants to bring up at this point? And I just wanted to add then, I should have said at the beginning, but welcome to our new board members and our new board members that couldn't make it. But thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you again at the next meeting whenever we get a chance to hold it. And hopefully before too long, we'll be having lunch at the airport again.
Hope so.
Can't wait. All right, thank you everyone for coming,
Thank you
and
very much.
we'll see you next time.
Good meeting, Thomas.
Take care.
Everyone.